Want to welcome everybody from the EDUCAUSE virtual annual conference to our session about facilities and IT and how to help them work together. I'm John Young with Vantage Technology Consulting Group. Panelists today are...
Hello, I'm Scott Himes, and I'm the Director of Network Operations at Biola University in Southern California.
Hi, Jim Monek, Director of Technology, Infrastructure, and Operations at Lehigh University.
I'm Mike Storer. I'm a Director for Telecommunications at Rutgers University in New Jersey.
So thank you all. If anybody has any questions for the panelists, our contact information will be on the last slide that will pop up at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to reach out to any or all of us with any questions. So we're going to dive right in. Why is it important for IT and facilities to engage during construction projects, during the design phase, pre-design, and throughout the construction project? Jim, you want to kick that off?
Yes, thank you. So I think it's very important that IT gets engaged from the very beginning of any construction project, either new or renovation. IT can really provide the standards for networking, for communication, for classroom technologies, including locations of your closets, locations of access points, classroom layouts where you want the podiums to be. Because once you have the building built, the walls built, it's very difficult to go back and retrofit anything later on, and also very costly to do so.
And I think that extends into the design process. The earlier we note a thing has to happen, the less cost, the less impact the project. If we note that the telecom room is the wrong size, or isn't stacked, or something isn't meeting what we believe the technology intent is for the space, the earlier we catch that and get the design team together and the architect and everybody to ensure that the design as the design is being finished and as it's being costed, it matches what it needs to be.
Yeah, I also agree with that too, because the other thing to consider too, what we found in as you go through the design phase and you do the reviews with the architects, they have a certain way or certain layout that they want to do, network closets, number of closets, locations. And what we've found is we've been able to save money by understanding the architect what they want, but they need to understand what the customer wants. And a lot of times we were able to reduce a lot of our number of our closets that we required with way less than what they originally had in their plan. So we were able to save money overall. And then sometimes they would look and they would put like server rooms in building where necessarily they didn't need to do that because we have data centers on campus. That's where we put our equipment. But they just put the room there because they thought that would be something that the customer, being either the college would want to have, but the reality is it's not what we want. And we're able to reduce costs that way by saying we don't need that server room. We'll put the systems in our data center so that's more space to be used for classrooms, for labs, or whatever the purpose may be.
And Mike, I know at Rutgers you have some significant effort that's gone into strong design standards to hand off to the architectural team. Is there anything you want to add to how that process has helped and what you've done to create those standards?
Yes, at Rutgers we've developed a very strong Division 27 telecommunications specification that we share with facilities and any of their partners, whether it be an architect or a developer. It allows them to see what our expected design is. It also acts as a playbook for the specification of equipment and materials that are going in on the project. And it allows them to understand what they're actually bidding on, because a lot of times if you don't really explain the level of detail that we expect, the type of fire stopping you're using, type of cable, type of connectors, we want to make sure that we put that all out in front of them so we can discuss that at our project meetings as the project develops.
One of the things we've noticed too is that when we get those things out in front, then we're able to handle we're preempting the questions about things like, what's the heat load in a teledata room or telecom room? What switches do you deploy standard so that they can calculate some of those heat loads for cooling for that space in advance. And those are the things that really benefit us long-term in trying to maintain our equipment.
And I assume that all of you put some effort into continually updating those standards as changes come to, whether it's your structured cabling standards or your as we look at additional kinds of things that start coming into the telecom rooms with PoE lighting and all those kinds of things, that we update those standards to reflect what we want to be built into the next facility and the next renovation?
Absolutely, we do. We're seeing a lot of changes with regard to the amount of cable going into buildings now. So while people sometimes get the idea that they're going to reduce the cable budget for the building, it's really just that we're shifting the cabling over to Internet of Thing devices, and we just need to make sure we account for rack space and that we get that stuff in the walls in the right place so we don't end up cutting holes in our brand new beautiful buildings.
One anecdote for being involved in the design process early on for us was, as we began the process of designing our cinema media arts building, the one of the spaces was designed to be a server room, but as Jim mentioned, server rooms were already identified on the campus. We don't need that in this building, but it was something the architect believed was necessary, and so we turned that room back over to the designers, and both the architectural team and the stakeholders here at Biola, the cinema media arts team, were happy to regain a large room in the building that they could repurpose for their uses. So that wouldn't have happened if we had been doing this at the end of the project instead of the beginning.
So far we've talked about this largely in terms of construction projects for new construction. How does this differ when we're talking about a renovation?
I can take a stab at that. So what we find with renovations is there are a lot of housekeeping issues, given the layers of technology over time, technological debris, so to speak. So in order to become code compliant and pass, we have to eliminate all the legacy PVC jacketed cable. It's also an opportunity to go and rethink what the best idea of the 1980s or 70s was, and possibly benefit the parts of the building that may not be seeing that renovation by building new closets that have the capacity to support those spaces eventually when funding can be applied to that.
Yeah, Mike, I do agree with that, because we have a similar situation where, because facilities lets us know about renovation projects, whether it's classroom, office space, or even sections of buildings, we always take an opportunity to take a look at our project list and say, for years we've been wanting to hit that part of the building, upgrade wireless, upgrade the wiring. Since you're going to have the walls open, you're going to be doing the work anyways, it's an opportunity for us to come in and do the work that we need to do at less cost for IT to get that stuff done.
Yeah, one of the things we found is that in the past, at least, we were always on the tail end of these projects, right? We'd be coming in, facilities would come to us saying, hey, how can we need these extra Ethernet drops here, or we need this, wireless over here, but everything's all sealed back up again. And so now, being involved in the beginning of that project, we've worked out a process at Biola where we are able to have them open a project with IT as a subcontractor early on in those remodels, that then gets them kind of in the foreman, the GC seat, general contractor seat, where they need to be, but it brings us in at the beginning to scope that out and know where things should be at the beginning of the project, so that we're getting those in place instead of having to reopen walls, like you were saying, Jim, and do it all over again.
And I imagine getting involved in early phases of the design and construction of a space, where there's a new building construction or renovation, is often not about the entire facility, but maybe they're doing something to the roof or to the penthouse or somewhere that might be sort of back of house, that provides an opportunity, say, for example, for outdoor wireless, that you might have a hard time otherwise getting the cabling and the mounting and all the things aesthetically, or maybe they're adding a generator for some other purpose, and we have a limited need for a generator in the building. Being able to know about those sort of back of house kind of operations, I imagine there's been some opportunity, whether it's those kinds of things that I was referencing, or structured cabling, an outside plant. We're putting conduit in the ground for new electrical or water or something like that. We can have a pipe. Then there's sometimes an opportunity to substantially enhance the fiber on the campus.
So John, I can give you an example of what we ran into at Lehigh. So recently, the facilities, they wanted to bury the power that came from Mountaintop campus down to main campus. The power lines were on poles going through the mountain. You're subject to trees falling on the branches, that kind of stuff. So they finally wanted to bury all that power. So while they were in the ground burying the power, they provided, because they work with us, they provided us conduit for telecommunications. And so we were able to pull our fiber off of the same run, off the same poles, and put it underground along with their power. And because of that, we gave them some of the fiber so they can monitor and manage their substations. So that was kind of part of the deal. You give us the conduit, we'll give you connectivity and support.
One of the things we've learned in working with facilities and with stakeholders around the campus is that and in order to get in early on some of these projects, we've got to walk that project with facilities early on too, and ideally with facilities and the stakeholder department that's going to be living in that space, so that we're having the early conversations. We're getting in there together and saying, we're defining the requirements. Here's what needs to be here. We need these drops. We need this cable. We need these APs. Whatever it is, but we're in the space with all the really interested parties very early on in the process, so that we get all that stuff out on the table. And we found that's made a big difference too. Just being aware, because we've actually had the conversations with the people who care the most about it, so we can address those concerns early on.
So I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about how did that process of bringing facilities and IT together, and maybe other interested stakeholders, how that comes to how you were successful at bringing those stakeholders together, and how you were successful at furthering those relationships. And I think, so for example, one of the things, Scott, that I heard in that is not just the conversation during the design and construction process, but earlier on, the capital master planning process, the other things that are feeding towards the facilities master planning process, that are feeding towards, in 5 years, we're going to take this building down, or we're going to take this existing parking garage and build something, or this quad, or whatever that thing is, or this space that isn't even part of campus, we intend to buy it, and we're going to add some things there. Having IT engaged, having a seat at the table to know about those things, provide input, and to plan for that, I imagine provide some pretty great opportunities.
Absolutely. I think for many years we felt like we were like the tail wagging the dog. It was we were always the ones bringing up the rear of the project, and feeling like we were the bad guys because we had to tell people that something had to change because of some requirement we didn't know about, or it just we ran late or cost more because we were adding stuff to the project that was unknown at the time. And so I think that's really what spurred us on, is we have to get better at this. We have to change this process, and really for us what that took was relational. It was getting in with our facilities colleagues on a regular basis to say, hey, what's going on? What projects are you aware of? What's coming up? And so we started a couple regular meetings. One is we actually have a weekly meeting between our CIO and our AVP that is in charge of facilities. And I get to be a part of that and learn more about the projects that are coming, but also get to feed into the conversation and say, here's what we're seeing from the IT infrastructure side of things. But then I started doing that with kind of my colleagues on the facility side, the project managers, saying, let's meet every couple of weeks. Let's just make sure we're on the same page with these projects, so that A, we're building the relationships, but then B, we're talking about the projects on a regular basis. It's made a huge difference for us.
And how have you extended that beyond what we might describe as IT infrastructure and the main facility staff? Are you extending that to classroom technology, or to public safety or risk management, some of the people outside of the base of networking and telecom?
Yeah, I'll start and just say, in our situation, I think one of the biggest areas we've seen that has been with our campus safety department. We've established some really key relationships with them. It's been two-way. They've requested services from IT, but then we've been looking for ways to partner with other divisions too. And so it's been a really natural fit. But over the last few years, we've put a few different systems in place for campus safety in particular. But those have really flowed from that relationship. We built up an Informacast for emergency messaging and notification around the campus, and that all came together really quickly and really much more seamlessly than in past projects because that relationship already existed.
Yes, and for us, for Lehigh, what we do meet on a monthly basis. Facilities, IT, police department, risk management, communications, access control, a lot of different departments in the campus. We meet on a monthly basis. Facilities, leads the meeting. They go through the big long project list, whether it's a very big project, whether it's down to the small renovation project. An opportunity for all the groups to speak up and chime in with their needs and kind of make sure we're all on the same page with all the construction projects that's going on. Excellent way to get your team to collaborate together is just to have those meetings on a monthly and a regular basis just to cover that stuff.
So Jim, how did you get that process started? How did you help those other groups to see the value in coming to that table regularly?
So for me, luckily, my predecessor, they have already started that process. So when I came to Lehigh about 4 years ago, my first week, I literally walked into that meeting, and that was the meeting, and we've been doing that really ever since then on a monthly basis. So it was a great process that was started before I got there.
So at Rutgers, we assign a dedicated project manager and construction manager to all major new construction and renovation projects, and they'll stay with the construction team from facilities throughout the project. I mean, it gives us an opportunity to manage the subcontractor, whether it's a vendor that we bring in or if it's a vendor the developer would bring in. We assist them with understanding and implementing the cable plant the way that we like it, giving us back the as-built the way it'll go into our cable management system.
So I'd like to add a couple of anecdotes about how this can be successful and why it's particularly helpful. So I had a client who built a new data center in an old building, and there didn't have the right communication with the master planning group. And so this became the primary campus data center. And they found out shortly after the data center was completed that the building that the data center was now in was slated for demolition in 3 years. And that was obviously less than positive for anybody, and a significant lost investment, created all sorts of challenges. Another opportunity that I want to describe that was a big positive, the university happened to own the electrical utility in their area, just the way things worked out historically. And there were some large state incentives for energy efficiency. And this particular university had some old data centers in prime campus locations. It would have been, the square footage would have been better as classrooms, that were highly energy inefficient, had some really old stuff they really wanted to make go away. And they had a great building that was being vacated right next to the main campus utility plant. And so having all the people at the table created an opportunity to say, wait a minute, we have this great confluence of events. We have a way to pay for, with some state energy efficiency incentives, building a data center where it really belongs and recovering the square footage in places that provide some real value for the campus. And so that institution got themselves a beautiful new data center and provided considerable value and made the campus happier. The campus may not care about the data center, they certainly care about the dollars, and they cared about having classrooms where they wanted them instead of a bunch of servers.
John, could I add one example to the benefit of the meetings and conversations with your facilities team as it feeds into the master planning process? One of the things that we've been hoping for at Biola for a number of years is to be able to build a second data center on the campus somewhere. And that, no existing building really fit the bill for that. And so as we've continued to work together with our facilities department to grow that relationship and to have those conversations, as the master plan has been redesigned over the last year or so, we've we've actually had the opportunity to add a space, and we, it's not a lot, right? But we feel really thankful, really excited about the fact that we actually have a reservation. There's a place on the master plan that is carved out for us for a second data center, more like a modular trailer style data center. But there is a space on the master plan for us for that purpose, for whenever it happens at some point down the road. We'll get there. But just the fact that there is a space on the master plan for it is huge. So that's a tangible outcome from the relationship we've built.
So one of the things I've often seen during that design, construction, and renovation process with facilities, with the master planning group, is that they see IT largely, when there isn't a strong relationship, as a major expense, right? Our fraction, our number of dollars and our fraction of the project in terms of expense has been going up and up and up. And they're used to seeing 30, 40, 50-year timelines on most of the things that are related to the built environment. And for us, whatever we thought about, by the time the building's done, we're already looking at replacing it. Right when we started that initial programming phase and the building's ready for occupancy 3, 4, 5 years later, it's something different already by then. And so dealing with that relationship of saying, look, this isn't an expense, this is helping to add value. This is what this facility is here for. It's not here for the technology, but it's here for teaching and learning or research or whatever the main use of that space is. And this technology is fundamental to providing that value. And so I imagine that there's been some significant improvement in why we have these costs and what they look like, and maybe even, I hope, some improvement in, okay, the project ate the costs for building it out, but now we have to maintain it. And so those costs often just fall onto IT without any additional funding for now the larger footprint of things that we own and maintain. So have you found any improvement from the relationship in that the financial side of things, of ensuring that things are paid for and that they're paid for over the longer haul?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. So fortunately for us at Rutgers, we put in place a project plan for a 10-year master plan for improving infrastructure that sort of ran parallel to the university's master plan for space. And through that process, we were all at the table and involved in both of those things. And we're almost at the cusp of being successful with the 10-year technology master plan, but we've gotten facilities to agree that whatever we build going forward from starting in January this year, we're going to build it to the master plan standards, which was unbelievable, because we never thought we were going to get that, but we got some people to agree at a high level, and we found that I think we're at the point now where I'm comfortable that it's not going to be a fight anymore for doing things that need to be done. It was very, very beneficial for us.
So if you were speaking to a colleague at an institution that was very early in this cycle, perhaps they've just joined an institution where IT and facilities don't talk very much, they're experiencing those pains that we've all referred to. What are your thoughts on how to get started? How they can help to begin that maturing process, start to build those relationships?
Yeah, I think if you're new to the campus, you have to talk with people, try to understand what were the pain points of previous project. Did you have to go back and do a lot of rework? What could work out better? Have those conversations. Explain your IT position and understand what facility positions are in these construction projects, because we want to get it done right the first time. We want to get the right cabling in there. We want to get the right switches in there. Yes, it's part of the initial construction project, but then usually IT, as John had mentioned, takes over the ownership of those assets from that point forward, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's certainly overall project-wise, the most expensive part is the wiring and the switches, and then maybe 5, 7, 10 years from now, you have to buy new switches. Same thing with wireless access points. I know that when we did a project with the residential services department on campus, they wanted to provide wireless access points in every bedroom on campus. And that project, and they were going to pay for it. And that benefited us tremendously because they were paying for all the wiring and all the access points. And we didn't have to do that work. we were involved in the design part, we didn't have to do the work. But then later on, from this point forward, we are responsible for the APs. We're going to be responsible for the switches going forward. But that's something I can look to pay down the road rather than paying the huge upfront cost of doing that project.
So I'll just add to what Jim said, and the benefit of talking with the people that you're working with at facilities, just building that relationship. The way that I got it started was just found a peer of mine on the facility side that was experiencing some of those same pains, like Jim referenced. Just what were the pain points? They were feeling it on their side too, just like we were feeling it on our side. So, and just buying them a coffee and saying like, hey, can we go have an offline meeting for a little while and just talk some of this stuff out and try to understand one another's perspectives a little bit more, so that we could start building the bridge. It was really, that's where it started. It was a bridge building effort, right? Just starting from the beginning and building a relationship, trying to understand the problem that they were facing, what we were facing, and how we could try to work together to make it better. And a lot of this grew from some of those conversations.
So I think, Scott, part of what you mentioned there is really powerful around that relationship building, starting with the perspective taking. What is it that's motivating that other person? Why do they think what they think about IT in general and about your role in the project? And now how can we help to reduce their pain points, make their life better, motivate them to want for us to be involved? And I think that's a really powerful part of this.
Historically, I think that our OIT teams had to be advocates for the customer to get the proper infrastructure in place. And when we aligned with the customers, we became the enemy, right? Because we're trying to take money out of the project. And it took time, but now I think they realize that it's of greater benefit over the long run. But that new person coming in, you got to be careful about how you present yourself as an advocate right up front, because they need to trust that what you say is what needs to happen. And that was a pitfall that we fought for many, many years at Rutgers, and I'm glad we got past it.
I think there's some great examples of what you were just talking about, Mike, around particularly some of the investment we might want to make that we're not quite ready to capitalize on during the construction. So maybe we want to pull some structured cabling to certain areas or some power to certain areas, reserving them, knowing that one day we might need outdoor Wi-Fi somewhere. Or in the classroom, we think that one day there'll be a change from a projector to a screen, or there'll be changes in the way that environment will work, and we don't want to have to rip apart the walls. We want to improve that. And so when we can show an example of, look at how much this costs to retrofit down the road and how important it was, or even projects that never came to fruition because they were so important, but they would have been easy, the institution would have benefited, then being able to bring those and showing those to the divisions so that the college, the division, whoever it is that the building is for, sees how much they want that. Then it doesn't get value engineered down the road. I think outdoor Wi-Fi is the most common example I hear of. We wanted to build just put some structured cabling so we could put it in down the road, and it gets ripped out, and then 3 months after everybody moves in, we want to put it back in, and it costs so much more to do it at that time. So as you think about how to get engaged with your community, construction projects are often one of the easiest ways to start that process, and sending a team member who can empathize and understand what the facilities team and what the tradesmen who are going through building the building are going through will help to create those relationships and solidify those relationships. Why do the electricians want to do what they want to do? Why is the architect thinking that? How can we help to bring all these differing opinions together who are probably all working towards the same set of objectives? And so having somebody there who's consistently there who can start to build those relationships is incredibly powerful. Having design standards that you keep up to date and that you share, often on your website, available for anybody, including their architecture team who is thinking about bidding on a project that you have. We're going to build a new science center. Start sending us bids for $100 million science center. If they can look at your design standards as part of that package, they'll be providing a better team. Everybody is improved by that. And then don't forget all the other people who aren't part of construction, whether it is campus police, public safety, res life, um, the deans, the people for the faculty who are living in those buildings, if it's a classroom building, the partners that you can have around the campus that have other things that matter for this. Um, and I can't emphasize enough when the facilities world, the things that we might think of as infrastructure, the electricians, or at least the people who manage the electrical and the plumbing and all of their kinds of large investment problems, they're facing a fairly similar problem that we are to fiber and copper, but on a grander scale. Theirs are larger, they're more expensive, they take up more space, and they're more used to digging up the road, and they're more likely to get a whole lot of money. And if we're able to capitalize on that new utility plant, that new road they're paving, to get a conduit put in that we don't have to resurface the road, all those kinds of things, it just starts to build momentum around why we can help.
I would like to say that one of the things, just in general, one of the things that has happened recently at the university is that the president, at the presidential level, our senior executive works together with the senior executive from facilities, and that happening made a big difference over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that. I mean, when you are involved with the entire construction project, working with facilities, working with all the different groups that's required of building a new building, it's just wonderful experience. And then when it's done, you're very proud. All the teams are very proud of the effort. You see that building, all the work that's been put into that building, all the infrastructure, and used to it's going to be the university for years to come. You're very proud of that.
Yeah, and you can be proud of the building that you built, the infrastructure you provided, as well as the relationship that you built, the relational capital that you built along the way, that allows you to be even more successful on another project down the road, right? And something we're hoping to do too is to kind of build on some of those relationships and the partnerships we've built so far to continue that process and get more involved in, for instance, like what construction software tool that our facilities team ends up using, that we're engaged in that process too, helping select it, helping being integrated into it so that we can actually provide more real-time feedback in the construction process as they're doing the next project.
So thank you, everybody. We really appreciate your listening to the four of us speak. We hope this was helpful. Please reach out to any or all of us with any questions, feedback, thoughts, new ideas. We all want to work together. That's part of the wonder of working in higher education.